All right. Are you guys ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Agreed.
All right, here we go. Welcome to the UnityNow podcast, the podcast all about the Unity movement. We have a special episode here today with three of our hosts of the UnityNow podcast, including myself, Eric White. I'm joined by Toby Davis and Gabe Garber. How's it going, gentlemen?
Doing well.
Doing well. Yes.
Yeah.
What a week, huh?
To say the least.
Could be an understatement so far of the year.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to do this podcast. Originally, it was going to be about some of the things that Gabe and I missed during the holidays. Each of us kind of took a little reprieve from following the news, and we were going to have Toby fill us in on some of the things we may have missed. And then January 6th happened and everything thereafter. So we're going to call an audible, a bit of an audible, and have a discussion about those recent events and get into some of the things we may have missed if there's time at the end. So yeah, any preliminary thoughts, anything you guys feel compelled to dive into here with this topic?
I would just add real quick, we're recording this about 4 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, the 10th. We wanted to go live, but if we get this out the 10th, 11th, or 12th, we all know there'll be a lot more changing by the time this is published. So just a quick caveat.
This will probably be outdated by the end of the news cycle tomorrow. So
it's probably outdated in the time we've spent trying to get it set up, the past 40 minutes. So we might want to pull up Twitter real quick or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
See if we haven't been banned yet.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're not conservative enough, maybe. Hopefully.
Yeah. Maybe, but that isn't that the dangerous zone is whenever they don't know what you are, right?
That's true. Yeah, and so maybe I should be quieter. Maybe you guys should ban me because I came from a conservative background. Todd as well, right? Todd, our sound editor, he came from a conservative background. So the two of us should probably be banned to be safe. From the podcast.
And I've been called a white supremacist in training this year, so I have one foot
this year
out the
as
door.
in 2021.
Oh no, 2020. Within the past 365 days.
Been busy.
Yeah.
Well, I've been wondering that about you, Eric. So let's hear the truth right now. Are you?
Yeah. Me and David Duke were super close. No, this is gonna get clipped, and I'm gonna get. I guess we don't have enough, but yeah, it's a weird time. I think, as mentioned before, I was taking a little break from following the news. There were some things that happened during the holidays, and I not forcefully, but purposefully avoided learning more about it. I was having a great holiday, didn't need that in my life. And then January 6th came, I couldn't look away from the news. I was glued to it pretty much all day. How about you guys?
Yeah. I'm coming from the same sort of like time away, intentional, taking some space sort of experience over the holidays and just trying to regroup and rest up for, hoping to just gear up for what the new year is going to bring. Little did we know that very quickly we would find something else just to that we couldn't look away from. I found myself just in the kitchen cooking pretty much all afternoon on with just the news in my ears all day in the headphones. So it was just, I wasn't as much watching, but listening along as things unfolded.
Yeah, I was, as you guys both know, I kind of stayed more in tune with the news throughout the holidays. But most of that was leading up to, the Georgia Senate runoffs and the January 6th session in Congress to confirm or not Biden. And so I was, looking forward to the 6th, really to see how that worked, because I had never watched that before. And I had planned to watch it whether I was at work or if I worked from home that day. I ended up working from home. I was watching it live. They had just gotten into debating, Arizona's objection. And I was watching C-SPAN on YouTube, their live channel. And also trying to keep up on Twitter because I follow people like UnityNow and Elijah Schaefer who are always in the middle of riots or protests, and they were catching in onto it before the live feed was. So they knew that people were starting to approach the barriers and the police and get through. The first thing I think I saw was that rioters, or I forget how they termed them, but they had broken through 4 layers of fencing or barriers. And so I was then glued to the live feed on C-SPAN to see, what was going to happen. Because, did they prepare for that? Did they have enough police or the army or whoever, lined up for that? And apparently they did not. So, and then we all know what unfolded.
Yeah. I know I was struck listening to the Fifth Column podcast and several of the, like Moynihan and Matt Welch, both having histories of working in the press in the Capitol building and talking about how obnoxiously hard security is there normally. So, and just like annoying to have to go there. And then just to see this as described as like an obnoxious kind of wall, barrier, boundary, security line being breached seemingly effortlessly, Yeah. It's perplexing, I guess.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the whole thing is perplexing. I'm still not sure that I completely understand what happened. I know what I saw. I know I've read some reports. I also have a friend who's very deep into conspiracy theories, so I was treated to the wildest conspiracy theories the other day, which was fun. But, for me, the most disappointing thing of the whole day was being on Twitter and seeing a certain amount of people immediately make this completely about race. That was it seemed so lazy in a way to see all these otherwise smart people just being like, well, this is proof that racism in America is a real thing. And, like I watched the NBA that night and they were talking, all the NBA players were talking about how this is evidence that Black people have a different standard held to them. And, in some respects, I have sympathy for that. I do understand that there is a real problem there that minorities face in our country. But at the same time, it's like, we don't know all the facts of what happened there. And to just make it about race whenever it just seems so lazy to me. Did you guys have a similar experience in your Twitter feeds or what you were watching?
I did, and I was even kind of tracking notes and screenshots of tweets for this episode in particular. So there's one that now you can always consider the sources as well. So Breitbart posted about LeBron James says, we already know what would have happened to my kind if anyone would have even got close to the Capitol, let alone storm inside the offices, inside the hallways. So there's that. A quote from LeBron James.
Just 1 second though, can we touch on this maybe?
Yeah.
Like I feel as though there's truth to that. There might be a certain amount of truth to that. And that, that could very well be the case. And I have sympathy for that, like I said. At the same time,
I would even go as far as to say like there is truth to that. It's the thing that matters is the extent to which that was active, that holds some proportion of the causal momentum, I guess. That was, I don't know, and that's what needs to be. That's almost impossible to define. But jumping to the point of saying this is absolutely what this was caused by is, I think that's where like the laziness makes sense as a word to use there, or just kind of like a quick to like reach for the tools that you're familiar with.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I mean,
cut you off.
And that's the point. I think what a lot of they're saying is, so the far right's defending that statement by saying, well, for the past 7 months, there have been riots that have been, allowed to go on, without arrests or without major arrests or, and a lot of has some truth. A lot of it doesn't have some truth, depending on who you follow. Again, the people like UnityNow and Elijah Schaefer on Twitter. And then you have, so here's one of the responses to this claim that, it's unfairly swayed for the white people that invaded. So then there is the Million Martyr March, supposedly coming on January 20th. And this is for the slain white young lady that was killed in the Capitol, right? Mm-hmm. So that's saying racial justice the other way. And that's they're using that as the tool, the mechanism, supposedly to plan this march. It's something that's supposedly going around on Parler that I just saw this afternoon on Twitter. Somebody screenshotted it.
Which, if you're not already on, you are unlikely to be able to join at this point in time. That's like another one.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole thing just seems like, is that what we should be talking about in the aftermath of this event? It's like, are we just going to, instead of trying to understand the problem and trying to fix it, we're just going to label it as being racist? It was like in the wake of the election, how all, not all, but a lot of Democrats or Biden supporters started labeling Trump voters as racist. And it's like, well, that's 50% of the country. We're talking about millions of Americans who are far more nuanced than casting a vote because they're racist, and it's just that same kind of analysis that I'm just like, I had to unfollow a ton of people that were pitching this because I was like, you know what, I like to have a diversity in my Twitter feed, but I can't deal with this anymore. Like, this is obnoxious. It is just so, I don't know. You're not trying to make anything better, You're not actually concerned with fixing things. Gabe, we lost you.
Yeah. Uh-oh. There he is.
There you are.
Sorry. Yeah. I heard most of what you were saying.
Yeah, basically I was just saying that I was just comparing what happened on the 6th and the people's analysis on the left of how it was a proof of racism to the aftermath of the election. How, in the aftermath, you had a lot of people on the left saying that people on the right were racist monsters, and they weren't taking any time to actually think about the people on the left. They were just using a lazy analysis to label the other team, and it's like, how do we change that?
I had a good buddy of mine kind of give me I think a helpful analogy in terms of just like chiseling away at marble or rock or whatever it is. If you start out with a blunt instrument to kind of chip away and just to get that like basic form, and then as you dig deeper, you need a more fine-tuned utensil to carve more precisely, and that's the nuance here. So it's like this, racism as a problem. Like, when we are wanting to chip away at it, to start, absolutely, we need to make big chips away. Like, take it out in bigger blocks at a time, and for that, we like a more general, broad form use of that as a mechanism is helpful. But like as you start to do that, eventually, like, you would hope that the goal would be to have something with a little bit more resolution to it. And in order to do that, the tools have to become sharper for us to be able to operate with any precision. And yeah, I think that's, I don't know.
That's an apt analogy.
I thought so myself. Hopefully I did justice to it, but
yeah.
Well, maybe we should unpack that claim real quick. So is that true? If that was an entire group of 10,000 or so people, where 1,000 or so of them went in and they were all black or brown people, would they have been attacked more fiercely? Would they have been tried to stop with force more than this group was?
It's impossible for me to know for sure if that's the case, but I would, if I am a gambling man, and if I was placing a bet on this outcome, I would bet yes, they would be treated differently.
And why?
Why? Because I believe that, this is a good question. Why do I believe that? I believe that because in some places, there was exceptions like Portland, but even Portland is a mostly white city. It's not, the percentage of Black people that were in those protests was very low. So it was actually a very white phenomenon going on in Portland. But I believe that, there was other instances of Black Lives Matter protests being met with force, being met a little heavy-handedly, using rubber bullets on protesters. And I don't know. I guess I don't. That's a good question. Why do I believe that? I don't know. Gabe, back me up. Why do we believe that?
I would just say, backing up in general, one thing that like sticks out for me here is this drawing of false equivalency, or like, because certain aspects, riots can be compared to one another. There's also other aspects of this that are completely not equivalent, and drawing an equivalent and trying to compare them without acknowledging the areas that don't overlap is important. It's an important distinction to draw. And I feel like a lot of it does, like, it's a weird conversation to utilize the fact that they were both riots stemming from protests to try to, I guess to compare them in certain ways just doesn't necessarily get to the part of it. In either case, it actually kind of seems to bastardize both arguments.
I would say, I don't know that you're wrong or right, and I'm not asking why because I'm challenging it. That was, just to see why you thought that.
That's a good question for sure.
Because I would
why
think,
is always a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the question that never gets asked, right? So there's all these claims.
It's the street epistemology, dude.
Right. Yeah. Why do you think that? Yeah, that's Anthony Magnabosco. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But so the reason I asked that, and so what I've seen from the videos, the pictures, the Capitol Police and the forces there, I believe were just truly overrun by the numbers, and I don't believe they saw this coming whatsoever for whatever reason.
Put a pin there. Because that seems suspect to begin with, knowing it's not like the objections to the process those were broadcast well in advance. So,
and I've seen
Holly and
you're right. And I was worried about this. I couldn't say that I would see them overrunning the Capitol, but I knew, like, following the likes of Brandon Straka on Twitter, I knew they were organizing a huge rally, if you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. So I knew it wasn't going to be just them, being nice and holding up their signs. But like one video I saw a group approaching a Black police officer inside the Capitol, and he, hand on his gun and was trying to shout them down to tell them to stop, but he couldn't. And so in that instance, that individual, and this is what I'm getting to, I think, is we have to look at each individual involved and what their reaction is, because every time we put these group assignments on everybody and label everybody based on their area or their group or their race, that's a slippery slope. So like this gentleman, he backed up and there's nothing he could do. He could have fired all 10 bullets in his magazine, and he still would have been overrun by the 30, 40 people behind the 10 people he shot. And I don't think he would have done that if they were Black or brown people, just like he didn't do it if they were white people, because, if he did, what would you say? Because he was a Black police officer. So there's an individual case that I would be curious about.
Do you think that I just had this thought that we that stems from, we don't need to go down the systemic racism rabbit hole, but we all know that there's racism in our history, and there's a certain level of
lingering,
lingering
visual,
effects. It's, that long of a history of racism is going to have its effects, and we can debate all day about how serious those effects are and never come to any truth. But do you think that there's something to be said about the threat that a group of Black people present versus a group of white people just because of that lingering sense of that lingering racism and those things that might still be present? I know that Toby, you might feel a little differently about this than we do, perhaps. But yeah, I don't know. It's just something to think about. Is there a perceived threat that is greater from a number of Black people in our society versus just a bunch of white people?
Well, let's
That's a
play.
hard question.
It is a very hard question. It's it's just like everything else. You need so much nuance and to unpack all of that. Let's play the group identity game for a second, okay?
Yeah.
So, big group of Black people. Are they from poor areas? Are they from gangs? Right? Because that's a group kind of assignment to that kind of group. If they are, then yeah, I think they'd be more dangerous. The white people are they're typically the Republicans, right? They have all the guns. So now they're more dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's if you play that game, it could go either way. But if you want to talk individually, then you have to really unpack, well, what kind of people were drawn to this rally? Why were they coming there? And in any case, it would have been bad. I mean, both sides are there in these rallies or in these marches because they feel that they're ignored and they're tired of it to a certain degree. What were you going to say, Gabe? Sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to, I guess, try to maybe not, I don't know, I just be more careful around like drawing the conclusion that poor like automatically meant gang affiliation
Right.
and just, but yeah, I mean,
I don't think he was doing that.
I just wanted to be careful, so
right.
and
That
draw
was
attention to it. So
kind of like a hyperbole. So it's to play that game where it's like if you really step back and think about it. I'm glad we all came together to make this podcast, but in another sense, I wish we wouldn't have had to do it in the first place.
Oh, absolutely.
If we as Americans were able to think about these things as individuals and look at individuals instead of groups and assign these mass blames to groups and play that game where that's where racism comes in the first place, then we wouldn't be in this mess and we wouldn't have this event on the 6th and this podcast would not exist.
Yeah. And I was struck with another thought while you were speaking and this kind of ties into what maybe you were saying earlier, Gabe, about, the apples to oranges type of comparison where we're not comparing two things that perfectly overlap. And that is the cause. I think, Toby, you mentioned, why are they there? And that got me to thinking, the cause of the protests on January 6th, I think, was much more harmful to our country than a Black Lives Matter protest in terms of what the principles are behind it. This was a group of people who were trying to go against the documents that dictate how our country is to be run, the Constitution. That process of confirming those votes, they were saying, is one of the oldest processes in our government. And so this is a group that went out trying to stop that and get in the way of that. Whereas with a Black Lives Matter protest, agree or disagree with some of their demands, they are looking ultimately, so they say, and I even feel hesitant making this claim because the equality thing has been kind of bastardized. But
I was going to say,
do you see what I'm saying?
Regardless of where you believe the Black Lives Matter movement's like core principles to be, I think it still stands that that movement is probably more representative, like it has a higher representation of the American population than what was carried out on the 6th. I feel like the percentage of the American populace that the insurrection on January 6th represents would be dwarfed by even the most like careful reading of Black Lives Matter, and I do think that factors like that is something to be considered. And I feel like by over amplifying the well, no, I don't know. Yeah, I'll just stop there. Toby, what? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's unpack that a little bit. So the group, let's first dissect the group that went to Washington. The group that went to Washington, according to, I was trying to pull it up
Good
as we were
question.
talking.
Yeah.
Do they have a name? Is there something we could say like
This was
group
the Million MAGA March?
Million MAGA March? Okay.
That's what it was. I thought I was searching for that earlier on Twitter when I was looking for that Million Martyr March. That's for the 20th, the inauguration day, but it was the Million MAGA March was the one for the other day.
Okay.
So I don't know if you guys had a chance to see Brett Weinstein's latest Dark Horse, not his live with Heather, but he had,
with the journalist. No.
Yes.
No, I haven't yet.
Yeah, he had Jeremy Lee Quinn on, and I was watching that this morning, and so Jeremy Lee Quinn was in that group. He went into the Capitol with the group to document it, and what he described is the group in total was about the size of an arena. So it would fill a large arena. So you're talking 50 to 70,000 people. And he said the group that actually went into the Capitol is far less than that. So that's into the single digit thousands. And so many of the other people didn't even know that was happening, or they were so far from it and never intended to go into the Capitol. So if you want to talk about why the group was there, I think the group was there because they believed in the Constitution as well. Like, they weren't there to stop a constitutional process. They were there because they believed the Constitution was not followed in the first place.
And likely,
that's an important distinction.
Likely with grievances that broadly would be at least accepted as, valid.
And then that's why, and we can get into this in a minute as well if you want, that's why the senators who were going to object and had started to object to the states, that were being counted, which the first one was Arizona, that's what they were saying in the debates that were going on when it was interrupted. They were saying they were objecting because the states did not follow their own laws, which violated the Constitution for how federal elections should work. Right. And so that's the reason the objections were there. That's the reason that group was going to be there. But then the group that caused the insurrection and went into the Capitol, there you're right. Because, we were watching it live on TV. The constitutional process was working. They were debating whether or not, the laws were followed. And that's the very thing they interrupted when they went into the Capitol. And so that group, I wholeheartely agree with you, Eric. But the group, the entire group that went for the rally, I would say they were both, they were there for the same reason, that the majority of the Black Lives Matter protests happened. Right?
I think that is a useful distinction. And I really appreciate you making that, because I was not thinking like that before. But I think that's an important distinction, because just like in the Black Lives Matter protest, and
mostly
I was part
peaceful.
of it. Yeah, mostly peaceful. Like there's a larger percentage of people who are exercising their right to protest in a way that respects the Constitution, and then a small percentage of that were the people who had taken it too far. And I'm really happy that you helped me see that, because that's important, I think.
Yeah, and in the same token, like I said, like you said, the Black Lives Matter protests are exercising their right because they're not being treated, or their groups aren't being treated in certain areas of the country with some of what the founding documents say all of us should be treated with and given our unalienable rights. So I think both groups are protesting or exercising that right for the same reason. There's just these extremes where in Black Lives Matter protests that they get violent, or in this MAGA whatever march they got violent. But you're right. I think when you say it caused more damage, I don't think you're wrong there, because they were in the U.S. Capitol of all places, and they interrupted a constitutional process that then finished at 2:14 a.m. or 2:40 a.m. Like who watched that?
Yeah.
Eric
Yeah.
might have. You had the lag time. You might have stuck with that.
Yeah. On the West Coast time. Yeah,
Yeah.
right, dude. I got to a certain point that day and I was like, enough.
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore. I can't do
Yeah,
this.
same.
Yeah, I was trying to stay on to see when they were going to resume, but I couldn't do it. It was too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it also kind of like highlighted this was one thought I had, was just in terms of, again, that equivalency brought up. If we can just take it outside of race again and just focus on policing and
Yeah,
views on
please.
policing,
Yeah.
that also kind of highlights a very like inverted picture of what we have been seeing all summer, or all last summer with the BLM protests and defund the police, the aspects of it that were either attaching, whether they were like part of BLM or attaching to. Obviously, that was a large sentiment, and in this case, there was a call for more, a notable lack of defense at the Capitol. That, regardless of how you feel about how much there should have been, or it it was just an obvious lack that I think just brings that argument again into the picture of saying, well, do we really want, is this do we want to abolish the police entirely, or is it really a call like when it suits you?
Right.
And like, what's the conversation we're having? Like, that includes a policy that works for everyone and not just one side or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to look at it a different way as well. Like everything that's happening since, like the fallout, the big tech, censorship, all those things. It's like if you want to determine the what is it, the cause of a situation, like why did it happen? The best way sometimes is to look at the result, or to see the motive, look at the result, right? So, was there a lack of force? Were there people planted inside this million MAGA march that were not part of the group, that were trying to incite the rage and the violence in order to get a bigger lockdown on conservatives, from big tech to what, you name it? Like there's a conspiracy theory for you. I mean,
yeah, that's one of them, man.
Yeah.
That's one that my friend is firmly believes that what we saw were actors, liberal actors who were doing it to, his reasoning was to make the Biden administration look like a walk in the park, or to make it look better. We don't have to go down that road because that's completely conjecture, but it's just, I think it just goes to show the fact that these things spring up so quickly. It goes to show just the mistrust people have in everything,
Yeah. And even with, I mean, some of that seems as far-fetched as can be. Like, all it takes is one person to like actually doing that to verify that for the person looking for it. It's not like it needs to be rampant. And that I think goes back to the thought I had earlier of the thinking about like what this group, how that maps onto how it represents the American population. And like I feel like we're getting down to like fractions and fractions of percentage points of representation. And I think that actually is an important line to kind of hover on for a bit.
Yeah. Toby, maybe in your circle, I don't know what the political makeup of your circle is necessarily. I know that I didn't see this personally, but did you see anybody supporting what was happening, or was it all condemning?
I think it was all condemning. Because as far as friends and family, I mean, they're all, not all, but most of them are pretty hard right anyway. So I don't engage in those conversations much anymore. There's one person at my work that was upset at everything that happened, was not happy that they invaded the Capitol or anything like that. And I do, as a point on Twitter, for instance, I follow people that I know are hard right. Dan Bondino. There's a a lot of them that have, the walkaway campaign that have moved from the left and have gone right, and even most cases, hard right. So they are all full in on Trump and that sort of thing. And I think everywhere I saw, they were condemning everything that happened.
Yeah, and I think that goes to show Gabe's point of just how we're really dealing with small percentage points here of our population.
And this goes there. Like, I just wanted to kind of break down some of that, Toby, of saying hard right, or just to try to distinguish, because I think something Heather said in the most recent one this weekend, talking about of Dark Horse, talking about I think it was an article where someone was saying this is, we're split into two Americas, and her point was that's again like too simple of a division, because I mean, I think there is an important division of what you're like. I don't know if when you're saying hard right, is that our traditional conservative, or is that our Trump right, like,
or further,
and the same kind of goes, like, there's on the left, there's divisions there that are important distinctions to make, and it's not helpful to further the narrative that this is, to America is only one or the other, like down the line, any way you split it. I think those distinctions are going to bog down conversations for a while, but I think they're important enough to like try to implement, just so that we have a better sense of who we're talking about, and so that we don't accidentally lump in people unintentionally that don't deserve to, it's kind of a if the shoe fits sort of thing. So
that's a good point. Maybe it should be degrees, right? So the extremes, that's how bad it gets. So on the right, that's maybe your neo-Nazis, and that's the militias with the guns that are gonna hopefully not, but maybe fight in what they think is a civil war already, and then the extreme left is the ones pushing for communism or socialism, whatever, however you want to call it, neo-Marxism. And then there's varying degrees as you get toward the center. I would say we have one America. What we've learned through Unity, we have one America that's the majority of the country, but those aren't the ones with the voices. The ones with the voices are the medium, hard, and extreme left and right. And maybe that's the way to say it. So the hard right, the hard left would be the ones that are full-on Joe Biden or Trump supporters, and they really couldn't tell you good reasons why, right? They would tell you all the reasons they had to beat the other guy for the most part.
I think there's an even further left. We don't have to maybe go down this road, but there's a further left that didn't like Joe Biden. That didn't think he was left enough.
That's a good point.
And you saw this in the No Gas, No Brakes coverage of Portland. I don't know if you guys are familiar with his YouTube channel, but he's kind of like a on the boots on the ground reporter, kind of in the vein of Andy No, but he's a more comedic angle. He kind of interjects comedy into it. It's meant to show you how things are, but comedy in a comedy style. Like, he has a recent episode with where he goes out into the woods with Bigfoot hunters, and it's like all about this community of people looking for Bigfoot. But anyway, in the No Gas, No Brakes coverage of Portland, he was interviewing people that were at the protests, and there was a lot of people there that were like, fuck Trump, fuck Biden, like kind of in the Unity sense of like, not Trump, not Biden. But their motives for saying that were obviously far different than ours. But there's a whole section of that far left that maybe Bernie Sanders wouldn't even be left enough for.
Yeah, I mean, it's you could spend weeks trying to dissect that and diagram it out. So I think when I'm saying hard right, that's the kind of people I mean, like
extreme.
Dave Rubin, for instance. He's kind of hard right, and he used to be on the Young Turks. So I think that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
I think you're down to 14 minutes.
Oh no, this is flying. Well, before we switch gears, I want to just give a quick shout out to the guy selling grilled cheese at the Million MAGA March. Did you see that?
No.
He had set up a grilled cheese stand amidst the protesters and was just making a quick buck. And I saw that and I was like, that's what America's about. You recognize an opportunity to better your life and you just take it. It's like,
Capitalism right
yeah,
there.
that guy's got it down.
Supply and demand. That's like Twitter. I was going to mention this maybe today. It's like Twitter. I follow all these, news sources and political pundits, and then it's Uber Facts. Do you guys follow Uber Facts?
Mm-mm.
You should, because they don't give a crap what's going on in the country. They'll just give you some random fact about ostriches. Just every, and any number of different things. It's very funny to see that in your feed where you have the duopoly above and below them, and then they've got a fact about, what
like
pick it could be grilled cheese sandwiches.
Snapple bottle lid.
Right.
That's amazing. Well, do you want to spend a couple minutes here on Twitter? Are you guys going to continue after I've left? I hope so, if you can. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Maybe if we
see how it feels.
Yeah, feel we didn't get to enough of these topics, but yeah, Twitter, Parler.
Yeah, we could also do
stuff.
this kind of thing more often. Yeah. So happy to kind of cut it off and. Yeah.
But what were your guys' thoughts? I know there's a lot of conflicting opinions from people we probably all follow or respect about the Trump Twitter ban. This is something I'm still trying to figure out myself how I feel. I honestly, I don't know how to feel. Do you guys have a sense of if it was right or wrong and why?
Yeah.
To me, it's wrong for the reasons they do these things, but it's right in the sense that it's still their platform. And that's the kind of the conservative in me that says, if I took the time to build a company and it's a social media company and I say, like, here are the rules. Now you can get into the rules that they set and how often they change them. But if I say, here are the rules, and if you break them, you're gone, then that's my right to do that. Then you can, what the problem is, you get into how many people are on these platforms.
Yeah. And then you get into the deeper problem of now you have app stores saying which apps can even exist. And I think that is a bigger problem to me than an app saying, because I keep thinking about this and I'm like, are we making too big of a deal about this? Like, are people getting too worked up about this? Because it's not actually like, you're not being punished by the law for what you're saying. You're just being kicked off a platform. It's not like your rights are being, I don't know. It's a weird thing to try to parse out. Like, is this actually a right? Do we have a right to be on Twitter?
Yeah. Well, I think part of that for me, the thing that stood out the most was like this tacit sort of assumption that Twitter is reality. Like in a sense, it's like part of me is just like, okay, that's their right to do this, and whatever comes of that, like they will pay the price of. It's, I don't know. I mean, it could be their undoing. Like, and I think, I mean, it's their right to pick a hill to die on. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's also we've talked about social media in general, and I think there's an over reliance or like we treat social media as if it were real life, and it has so much more consequence to it than I think it necessarily connects with in a physical realm. Like, and so I think that's one angle that I took from it. It was harder to yeah. I think from a general free speech thing, I get it, but you also have to back up and realize that Twitter's a private company. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, there's kind of two ways. There's a way to put that, what you said, both of you said together, because there's a freedom to them doing that on their own platform. And does that limit free speech? Technically, no. But when there's a concerted effort, it seems, to say, okay, like you said, the market will kind of penalize them, right? The free market will say, all right, all the conservative followers of Trump, out of the 80 million followers, I don't know how many are the, his loyal base or people that will be angry and leave Twitter, but where are they going to go?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was Parler. And then Parler was not only taken from the app stores on Google and Apple, but now AWS, where they host their site, is kicking them off.
Yeah. See, that's I have a bigger problem with that than Trump being removed, because I think, there's a conservative bent to me in terms of the markets. Like, markets should be able to fill needs. You should be able to fill a need in a market if you have a product that people want.
Yeah.
You should be able to let the people decide the value of that through their patronage or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And if that to me is a bigger right. Like, if that right is being blocked, like if you can now no longer recognize a need and develop something to fill that need, that seems like a bigger problem to me than being kicked off a platform. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 And you can then you can take that down that rabbit hole even further and say, okay, well, the likes of Parler, well, they can host their own site on their own servers.
If they have the resources to, yeah.
Exactly. So now what are they doing? Are they building data farms of servers like Amazon has and Facebook has? Well, they can. That'll take decades. And by the time they're able to have that site ready for millions of people, they've already lost. The freedom of information has already been, if it's all on Twitter and you're only following or seeing what's on Twitter, and none of that's one whole side of the argument, then you've already lost.
Yeah. It's kind of like it serves like a sweeping it under the rug type of thing, or kind of like the monster under your bed, like just putting it away and not giving it any air to breathe, like doesn't seem to make it go away, but it actually bubbles under the surface. And I don't know. I think a lot more rage. I think it fuels a lot more of the rage that we saw on the 6th, and makes it that much more likely to boil over in a way that comes from not having a way to express yourself. And I just feel like it's a dangerous precedent to set for a lot of different reasons. And that, just to see how that ratcheted up from the temporary suspension of Trump to permanent ban, and then the Parler stuff, all within a matter of days. It just seems, and I think going to your point, Toby, of like the concerted effort among multiple companies in the same field to essentially make it impossible. And someone was saying like essential monopoly. I can't remember what they called it, but it was like a
operating as a monopoly, I think they said in the
de facto monopoly, I think is what they said.
De facto.
Yeah.
I think it is every brand or business's right to be exclusive, right? And marketplaces should be inclusive. So maybe the problem here is that the online marketplace is a business. The online marketplace, like you said, AWS, Amazon Web Servers, they can decide who has access to their servers to participate in this online market. So maybe there needs to be some sort of public utility domain, public utility server or something, where it is not up to the server provider to decide what can and can't be on there. It's up to people to decide what they do and do not visit or use. It's a hard thing whenever the marketplace is owned by a business. It's a hard thing to make completely inclusive.
Yeah, it'd be like public property not being public. It'd be like it's all owned by private companies, and if you could buy a piece of land and start a business and build a building, would be up to a private company, and potentially their ideology would limit their decision-making process. It's kind of like that. So that's not a bad way to state it.
But I will say too that the first idea of like how to iterate that would be like a state-sponsored thing, in terms of like an entity with enough resources to do that. And I feel like that would also be a tough sell. for many of us. But then, so the other, I guess, like I'm talking way out of my depths here, but just kind of
Same, yeah.
blockchain style, decentralized, Bitcoin esque a setup where maybe all of these private entities own that space together, but they all have like a decrypted access. Their allotment is scattered throughout, and so maybe it's a giant privatized decrypted thing that
Yeah.
this is where I'm like I don't know any of it, but
Yeah.
that could serve and fit into that kind of position.
Yeah. And I left my depth a long time ago. As soon as I said the word server, I immediately left the pool. So
Yeah.
Well, because you get
but
into
I mean it's just
I was just going to say, you get into the questions of if it is public, well, that's taxpayer money, right?
mhm.
And there's so many people that are hurting right now that we're trying to get the taxpayers more money and not take more from them. So if that kind of bill like went public, like, hey, we need to fund a public domain and data farm, people would just laugh.
Yeah.
Like, I can't pay my bills, and you want to worry about companies like Parler having a place to host a website? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, it also brought me back just thinking about the kind of concerted effort from these platforms to, I think it was the Sargon of Akkad thing when he got banished from Patreon, or it was something like that. I know the concern kind of shifted from, or it shifted to concern over like credit card companies, whether they would even process um,
Yes.
transactions. And so that's kind of a same thing where it's like if you can't get a credit card company that a major credit card company to sign off on processing the transactions, then if they have that control and that ability to do that, then yeah, they're cutting off that market or cutting off one's ability to
Mhm.
their resources. So I mean that's just another scary angle of it that again I don't know anything about, but it yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we figure this stuff out soon. I mean, when you think about it, it's all still so very young. We're still in like our infancy stage with the internet, in terms of like on a bigger historical scale. If you look at the history of, civilization, the internet is such a small blip in that. So hopefully we can get some better tools for, making it fair and accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the title of the episode, right? What now?
Yeah.
I don't know what now.
What now? I also had the idea it was kind of like a what this time sort of a way too, like looking ahead and also looking back like, oh, what is it this time? Just it's always something and it always will be something. And yeah, this one was pretty brutal and just like, yeah, we've got a tough week or two ahead of us.
Mhm.
So we have the inauguration on the 20th. Trump supporters have already said they're going to hold their own virtual inauguration for him.
Yes.
And
We assign someone to be on in attendance there to report.
Yeah,
Oh gosh,
get the link for that. Yeah,
draw straws.
half of this, I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory or fake news. I tried to do my Trump impression, but I don't.
Just be a giant swingers club for all we know.
Yeah,
That sounds so lame.
It's like Burning Man, but for the hard right. Like,
oh man.
Uh,
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
And then there's the Million Martyr March, which, by the way, I saw that from a conservative person that was denouncing the idea of it in the first place. She posted it to say, because they were posting images like what their logo would be for the march.
I don't hate the idea of that march, to be honest. It doesn't really bother me if people who identify as being on the right want to march to mourn someone who was killed in a protest. I mean, I guess there's sticky area because of what she was trying to break into the Capitol building. So
She was trespassing on federal property.
Yeah.
Yeah, stopping a
Yeah, that's true.
constitutional process. And obviously, I don't think she was armed. I don't think any of them were armed, but I doubt she was. It's not like she was walking down the street,
Right. Yeah.
gunned down by the Capitol Police from within the Capitol.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna plead the fifth on that one then and take some more time to think about it.
Back it up a bit. Yeah.
Rescind my statement there.
Yeah. Even just a quick thing, kind of going back to our the treatment of it by the media has also been pretty just intriguing to see the kind of dichotomy between how she was. I don't think she was lionized by anything, but maybe her some of her flaws were not as quickly broadcast as other. Yeah,
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I know where you're going there. Yeah, saying how she was convicted, whatever, a drug dealer, whatever. Yeah, pointing out what a terrible person she was, and almost to say she deserved to be killed. Is that what you're getting at?
No, I was saying I guess I didn't see that.
I know
as much.
That's the thing you didn't see.
Yeah. Whereas there is also a lot of time of kind of looking, when that I don't know, that brings it back into the race discussion.
Yeah.
I feel like I saw, maybe not in the mainstream media, but definitely people saying that she deserved it and that they didn't feel bad for her. But
I think for me, where it was I saw that more, that felt like more of a ground up dissemination of that information as opposed to being coming from the media. And I think they both serve purposes, like ground up and top down, but in this case it seemed more lopsided on the bottom up to get any people looking deeper, as opposed to just being reported that someone was killed in the Capitol by a police officer, that was all they really knew. But yeah, I don't know. That's another can of worms for another time.
Yeah.
One of many that we either just barely opened and didn't sufficiently get to, or left on the shelf for later.
This was fun though.
Yeah.
I do have to jet, but I enjoyed this a lot.
Yeah. I think it could definitely be a thing to work towards, especially as we get to live capabilities.
Yeah.
Get that under our belt a bit.
Yeah. Maybe we'll try to get this. Maybe I'll take over the reins of video editing and try to get this posted today or something.
Sure.
Wouldn't want to interrupt your Steelers watching, Aaron.
Yeah, I have a soup that needs to be made.
Sure.
Some things that need to be done before the Steeler game.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, tomorrow we'll see if they're going to impeach Trump in a 2-week deal, right?
We didn't even. Well, I guess we just did. I was going to say, that.
Well, that's
so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably do another one this week, honestly.
Right.
If there's people. So
I'm pretty free. So.
All right, guys.
Cool. Well, this has been the UnityNow podcast. You can find more of our episodes, usually interviews with guests with more expertise than all of us combined, usually. Not to say that you guys aren't experts, but, it's nice to have people who have a particular field, which is what we usually do. So if you're interested in finding those interviews, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen. Subscribe, like, and share. Thank you very much for listening.